Hi, Megan. I'm so excited to have you today on our podcast, Beyond the Mortgage. I've known you for many years, and we had a great conversation a few weeks ago about you joining on the podcast and talking about your financial journey. So I just want to dive right in. We've got a lot of content to cover, and I know you have so much information to provide our listeners. So let's talk about when you talk to me about your financial journey from when you were little to where you are now, your success, why don't you share that in your own words?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And we have known each other for quite a long time and created quite the friendship.
Yes.
And it's been wonderful to see your journey and your expansion and everything that you've done.
Thank
So,
you.
congratulations, Tracy. It's just
Thank you,
wonderful to
Megan.
see.
Thank you.
But when you asked me about my kind of how I was raised and the concept of money, it was really interesting because I think I had, I'll call it a competitive advantage. My father talked about money all the time at a time where a lot of other kids and other families would say, don't talk about money. Talking about money is rude. Talking about money is something you don't do. And if you do, it's just the parents behind closed doors. Well, I wasn't raised in that manner. In fact, I was raised the exact opposite. We talked about money all the time. I remember I'd come home from school and I'd swing open the front door, and there my father would be sitting at his desk with his calculator. And I would say, Dad, what are you doing? And he would say, I'm counting my money, Megan. I'm counting my money. And I would laugh because, like, 9 times out of 10, every time I saw him, he was counting his money. And I thought, how much money does this man have if he needs to count it every day? It was like Scrooge McDuck, right? Going through the money. And I thought, so interesting. And so as I started to get older, I started to ask him, what are you calculating? What are you looking at? Why is it important to keep an eye on your money? And one of probably the most pivotal moments of my life is when I came home around the age of 9 and I said to my father, you count all this money and you say we have all this money, but I just got home from my friend Brooke's house. Now they have money. You should see the size of their house. You should see their brand new cars. They even have a boat in the driveway, Dad. Now that's money. And he said, okay, kid, we're going for a drive. And we got in the car and we drove up to their house, and my dad parked right across the street. And he said, that's not a home, that's a house with a mortgage. That's not a car, that's a car lease. That's not a boat, that's a boat lease. And he goes, now I'm going to explain each and every one of those to you right now. And I'm 9 and I'm like, a mortgage, a lease. And he said, Megan, that's renting a life, renting a lifestyle. And he drove back to our home and we're sitting in the drive when he goes, this is our home, which we own clear title. This is the car we drive that I bought off the lot in cash. And we own our home and we own our lifestyle. And I thought, I'm 9. What does that even really mean? And he goes,
Mhm.
I'm going to talk to you more and more about this, Megan. And sure enough, every couple months and every year, my ideas and understanding about how money works and how leveraging works, which I'm sure you and I will get into soon enough. But it was this introduction to not only mortgages and leases, but credit cards. He would
Mhm.
he would bring me down to his office and he would say, "Let's pull up your mother's credit card statement." And he'd wink. "Let's see how much money your mother spent this month." And then he would say, "And did you know if I don't pay it off, I'm going to spend 18% on this every month I don't pay it?" And I would say, "Okay, well, what does that mean?" And he would do the calculation. And then he would say to me, "But you know what? Thank goodness I have a line of credit, Megan. So if I can't pay it all off with the income I have in the bank account, I'm going to use my line of credit." Do you know what a line of credit is? And then we talked about being a secured line of credit, being a personal line of credit, and why that would change potentially your interest rate. And so by the time I turned 18, I had 2 credit cards. I paid them off monthly. By the time I was 19, I applied for my own personal line of credit for $5,000 just in case I didn't have the money in my account to pay off my credit cards. And I bought my first home at 23 years old. And how did I buy that? I bought it with my RSPs. I saved 5% of the purchase price and I bought the home. And then I bought my first car. Now, when you talk to a lot of kids today, they talk about buying their first car before anything else. And that's because there's this huge discrepancy today on the true understanding of assets versus liabilities,
100%.
and a misunderstanding of what's building your wealth and making you rich. You know, my father used to say to me when we were younger, he's like, everybody looks rich, but wealth is something you can never see.
So true. It's so
And
true, right?
and he said, so I don't mind being invisible, Megan. I know I don't have the best car, but I have the greatest wealth. And maybe it's the greatest secret our family will ever have.
I love that. It's so profound. And I I think it's such a gift that you learned that so young. Most people don't have that opportunity. And a lot of parents still, have that where they're still struggling to try to define, what is financing? How do I become wealthy? And do I deserve to be
Oh,
wealthy?
yeah.
Right? To talk to me about with all the lessons you learned from your father and your family, and as you built your wealth, as you got older, what
Hmm.
was the number one lesson you think you could learn or tell people about money?
Leverage.
Yeah.
So there's a that to me was a huge defining factor in my journey, going from having a good paying job to having wealth. And particularly when it came to the housing market. And we all know you're a fantastic, amazing mortgage broker and help people buy homes every day. And a lot of people say, well, I just want a home to have a community to build a family. But it's one of the biggest wealth generators you will ever come across, especially in Canada. What does that mean? It means that when you choose to take an amount of money and invest it in a home, you're not just investing like you would in the stock market. Think about taking $100,000 and investing into the stock market. You're only going to get the interest on the $1,000 you put in. And by the way, you're going to get taxed on it when you take it out. You put $100,000 into a home, and you're not just potentially making the money when the home price starts to increase on 100,000. You're getting it on the entire purchase price. Whoa.
Exactly.
And then if you choose to sell your principal residence, the gains on that are tax free. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. I mean, there's just no other way to cut it. It
No.
was, and so that understanding between leverage and the
Yeah.
time value of money were the two biggest fundamental pieces that I learned when I was 23 years old, when I bought my first home. And then the time value of money was all about having money now and allowing time to take care of the rest. So whether it was saving more in my 20s than I will be now in my 40s, believe it or not, because I've just had 20 years of incredible compound interest. So, you know, I find particularly, and this is I'll call it an issue more for women than it is for men, is sometimes women focus on the small things, not the big things. So they think of coupon cutting, buying things on sale, cutting costs. Men have been taught to buy businesses, sell businesses, and leverage their properties to buy more properties. And so, fortunate enough to have a real step up about thinking bigger when it comes to growing wealth, not just cutting costs.
And I'm just thinking because there's so much in what you said and there's so much truth. I mean, over the years, seeing so many clients and the difference on that mindset between men and women, not everyone. I think over time it's evolved and women are becoming more stoic in their belief of themselves and their knowledge, right? So that growth from the financial side is increasing. But I do think that if you look at it, to your point, a lot of women are more wealthier later on in life than they are earlier. And I can see that that's starting to change, but coming from an era from myself, we were, women were just, no, you don't make a lot of money. It's just not something that's possible as a woman, right? So to your point, the question I wanted to ask you is, you and I talked about financial freedom
Mhm.
and what that means. You touched right now on that about men and women. Can you define that for me of what
Yeah.
you think that is from, from a female perspective and from the male perspective as well?
Yeah. So if we go back to the 1950s, only 25% of women were in the workforce.
I know. It's
And
incredible.
when today it's 82% of women are in the workforce. They represent 46% of the Canadian workforce today.
Yeah.
So there's a huge history in women entering the market slowly and gaining speed. Well, the cool part is we are gaining speed, and we are not just single women, particularly, are buying more houses than men. Women are going and graduating to from university more than men, and more women are becoming business for self. Because what was interesting about not just the 1950s and all the way up until now is that quite often women were put in what they call the 5 C's. And I don't know if you've ever heard about this, Tracy:
Yes.
caring, clerical, catering, cashiering, and cleaning. Okay, we were put into those roles. We were encouraged that by our mothers. And in the last 20 years, women are going, no, I want the big job. I want the better job. And what they started to realize was there was a huge connection between finance and power. So financial freedom to me is power. I have the power to leave that bad relationship. I have the power to leave that job I don't like and that abusive boss. I have the power to move to a better home and a better school system for my children. I have the power to make better choices when it comes to my health, my gym memberships, my organic food. I have the power to live a better life. And I think women, and I'll talk about men in a minute, I think women wanted the power to start making their own decisions. They wanted the power and freedom to design a life that was for them. And here's what I know that every man and woman has the opportunity to experience financial freedom. And by the way, it does not take $500,000 a year to make that happen. It's the simple and very old school knowledge of living beneath your means, looking at what you earn, looking at what you spend, and looking at what you save. I had a girlfriend in high school that came from the most humble beginnings I have ever seen. She had 6 siblings living in a 2 bedroom house. Her bedroom was the closet under the stairs with no windows. And when she became a waitress, she decided she would save all of her pennies for 5 years, and she bought her first house when we turned 19.
Incredible.
And then she went on to sell that property 7 years later, which had nearly doubled and upgraded. This woman had never probably made over $36,000 a year in her lifetime, and she's now on her third home. We
But
have
to
a
your
decision
point,
to make.
exactly. And it's also, I think, who is in her circle to be able to educate her, which you are, right? So
Yeah.
having someone there, because most people don't know where to start. And to your point, like I've had clients that I'm so honored to be part of their lives where they were single moms, 3 kids,
Hmm.
and now, especially one I can think of in particular right now, she has 4 properties. One she owner occupies, 3 rentals, working now part time, going to be retiring shortly, 10 years earlier than what she wanted, and has definitely built up a lot of wealth just from the compound interest and the
Hmm.
compound of equity from real estate in Canada. So to your point, it's powerful tools when you have the right mindset and the right people, which clearly anyone in your circle, Megan, is going to be a winner because you have the knowledge, you have the expertise, and you have a gift of being taught that so early at a young age with great mentorship, right? So I
Yeah.
think that, with a lot of listeners, they struggle with how to, live within their means and where to start with that.
Hmm.
Do you want to dive a little bit into that? Like, what would
Yeah.
be maybe some of the first things that you would tell people to do, right? To be able to kind of shift their mindset.
Absolutely. It's to look at, and I'll speak about what I just mentioned, what you
Hmm.
earn, what you save, and what you spend. And then you take those three things, and then you have to ask yourself every time you leave the house, what do I need and what do I want? And we are in the wanting stage.
Yes.
You can see it everywhere: Instagram, Facebook. Everybody wants to share the lifestyle of their dreams. I mean, I remember that when that day I said to my father when I was 9 years old, but Brooke's dad has a boat. Do you know what kids say today? Kylie Jenner has a private jet. The comparisons are mind blowing today. And because of that, you have generations upon generation of people today that are striving not to keep up with the Joneses. They are striving to keep up with the Jenners. It's almost impossible. But here's what I know: most of Canada is filled with workers, not buyers. And that's a big problem. We have an educational system that teaches children how to be workers, not business owners.
Hmm.
We have an educational system that gives you the basics so you can earn a paycheck, live month to month, and maybe save 10%. But what we do know, and it's everywhere, is true wealth is not built by working hard. It's built by working smart.
Hmm.
And the tools are around us. When you think about the middle class of Canada, because a lot of people preach how Canada is one of the best countries in the world, and I'm not going to say it's not. But what's really interesting about Canada is the survival and the maintenance of the middle class is built on credit. It's built
Yes.
on being able to borrow money. And the really wealthy people understand that they should borrow money and have that money working for them at a higher interest rate. When I was a kid, my dad had a $200,000 line of credit that was fully drawn every month. And I would say to him, "Oh my God, like that's huge. Why would you have that?" Because, Megan, I'm borrowing at a lower interest rate from the bank and I'm putting it out there in the market in second mortgages and I'm making another 5%. And I go, "Whoa." And he goes, "I'm using somebody else's money to make me money." Megan, I don't just work for a paycheck. I leverage my home and get a mortgage and buy other properties. I get a line of credit at a lower interest rate and I lend that money out at a higher interest rate. He goes, "I have found multiple ways to earn an income for this family." Think beyond the job. The job will get you in the door of experience in that first 5% down. But beyond that, you have to focus on these other pieces. And this is the secret nobody wants to tell you when you're 15 years old. They want to tell you to focus on your grades, be a good girl, pay attention, don't step out of line. I don't I didn't want to make apple pie when I was 16 years old. I didn't want to learn home ec. I wanted to learn how to leverage my wealth and become a millionaire by the time I turned 30. And nobody was having that conversation with me.
So much that you said there resonates, especially from the education perspective. When you look at it, even when I was going to school, we didn't even talk about what a budget was.
No.
Like, I didn't even realistically start looking at that until I was in university. And
Mm-hmm.
that was just because my partner at that time was very financially savvy and sat me down. And I came from the banking side. So my parents were in the banking industry for many years, and it was just silence in terms of being able to talk about financing.
Taboo. Taboo.
It was. It was almost like being middle class wealthy, I'd say, at that point was something you just don't talk about. It was almost embarrassing for them to be at that point. And I think that a lot of people grew up like that.
Mm-hmm.
So learning about financing and then being able to, what you do learn and then have children and be able to pass it down, we can see where the gaps are. And we can see it from the educational side, and we can continue to see it on the educational side. I've got kids, I mean, they're in their 20s now, but I still see that disconnect. And talking to clients where their children are younger, I mean, it's getting better on financial literacy, but to your point, it's definitely not there. And we have a society of lack of accountability for financing, lack of being able to have open conversation without judgment, because people are struggling. That's not an embarrassment. It's about, let's educate people to get them on a path of success, right? So, with going
100%.
back to all your knowledge, like you were so inspiring, but you're so knowledgeable to be able to give back and make a difference. And I want to talk to you about that. Like, with all the success that you've had, not only with your finances, with your family, but with your business. Like, as a woman in the C-suite, in the financial industry, I've been three decades, actually 2 generations in the banking industry, but 3 decades in the financial industry. And I've seen the struggle that women have had to be able to get to the C-suite. And I commend you, because I know that has not come without challenge and without having resilience and being able to pivot and have a warrior type mindset, right? But still with grace. You do that
Yeah.
eloquently. Like, there's no doubt. I am in awe of what you do every day. How do you give back with all your expertise and success?
Yeah, great question. Well, I haven't made it to the C-suite yet, but definitely have my eyes on it.
Yeah.
And it's been a journey. And what was interesting is the way I give back, and we can talk about all the different ways, but I'll tell you a story about the one thing I learned when I was young, and that was talk about it. Talk about my journey, talk about my success, talk about how I have made my money. And don't be shy to ask what you want. I remember when I was 23 years old and I was hired by my first financial institution, and they asked me to go to a golf tournament to represent them on the quote unquote hole sitting, where you basically welcome everybody. You're kind of like the Walmart greeter.
Mhm.
And in this instance, everybody that walked up to me, I said, "Good afternoon, my name is Megan McDonald, I'm the vice president of sales." And of course, I wasn't. But it would make them laugh, and then they'd ask the question, "Oh, is that what you want to be when you grow up?" Because here I am, this 23-year-old. And I said, "Absolutely. That's the job I'm going to have." So by the end of the day, and I walked into that dinner at that golf tournament, everybody was laughing, going, "Oh, there's the vice president of sales." And I wasn't, but I was talking about my dreams. Women have a tendency to not talk about their dreams out loud. So I talk about them all the time. I talk about where I'm going, how much I might want to make, how much I want to do, how much I want to buy, how much I want to build. Because the problem with wealth is it was a secret.
Mm-hmm.
It was a secret held away from women to control our destiny. And so, one of the absolute fundamentals of me giving back is having a conversation just like this. And my husband will laugh because he says, if there's a dinner party and there's more than 3 people in the room, my wife is doing a TED Talk. I can't help myself. I have to ask the question, what are you doing with your money? Where are you spending your money? How are you building your wealth? How are you empowering yourself? And it's not an easy path. Along the way, I was told women don't do that, Megan. Women don't say that, Megan. Women don't have those goals. And trust me, honey, even if you got there, you wouldn't want it. It's so stressful. How could you manage a family and manage a household? Trust me, darling, pat me on the head. I know it sounds fun, but it's not. It's serious business. And I would just smile and say, "Thanks for the advice. I'll see you at the top." Or I won't, and I'll wave down at you.
I love it.
Because everybody had an opinion on my journey, and everybody had an opinion on not just my journey, but a lot of people have an opinion on a woman's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have a huge opportunity to help women by simply talking about it. My niece is from Calgary. She's just turned 19 years old, and she's in the music business. And we went for dinner, and she lives with her mom, and she's been saving all this money. And I said, "Well, how much money do you have?" And she looked at me, she goes, "I don't know if I should tell you how much money I have." And I said, "What? I'll tell you how much money I have." And she goes, "Are you kidding?" And I said, "No, how much money do you have?" And she tells me, and I said, "Great. You're going to buy your first home?" Well, is that even a thing? Is that even possible? I said, "Oh, it's more than possible." I said, "You have 5% down. Let's look at condos at 700 square feet." I said, "You can live in Calgary. Oh my God, the affordability, and let's get you in this, and let's get you in that, and let's get you
Love
rolling."
it.
She looked at me and she goes, "I don't even know what to say." And I said, "You want to be a millionaire by the time you're 30 years old? That's the only question. Yes or no?" And she goes, "Yes." I said, "Then follow my lead."
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. I mean, and going back to when I talked about CEO, I always tell people, and I mentor a lot of ladies in different industries, and I always say, and just whether they're owning their business or working for someone, you're the CEO of your
Mm-hmm.
life, right? You're the CEO of your
Great
mindset,
point.
right? It doesn't matter what your title is. To your point, what you've said numerous times, you could be, working for someone, earning a salary, getting bonuses, and still have financial freedom. It's what you do with your money, right? That makes the biggest difference, right?
You're absolutely right. And I love you for saying that because I have had people who said to me, "Well, why do you work for the man? Why do you work in
Yeah,
corporate? Megan, you could have been so successful doing something else." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I have what's called an entrepreneurial spirit.
you
So
do.
whether I'm business for self or whether I choose to spend my time with a corporation, that does not limit me. And I've been able to have this tremendous life because I followed some key fundamentals. And by the way, they're not sexy fundamentals. I didn't put $10,000 into Bitcoin and turn into a billionaire overnight. No, I saved, I invested, and I leveraged. And I never took my eye off the ball. And by the way, I only refinanced ever to buy another property, never to pay out my debt, because in the back of my mind, everything I buy, I analyze as a need or a want.
Yeah.
And then I make a decision. And I recently, well, maybe not so recently, about 4 years ago, I bought a new car. Now, it's not new. No, it was 4 years old when I bought it. Why? Because I know something about cars. I know that they're a liability. I know that they're not an asset. I know the moment you drive off the lot, you've lost 20, if not more percent of the value instantly. I also know that that car is going to continue to depreciate every single day I drive it. So when I was 23 years old, after I bought my first home, I bought my first car. It was a used car off the lot. I drove it for 15 years, Tracy, without a car payment for 12 of those years. And I remember pulling up to my golf tournament, and all the brokers said, "Oh, your car in the shop? Is that a rental?" Because, hey, everybody around me was driving Beamers and Mercedes, and I was driving this beautiful little TSX. Or beautiful, I thought so. And then finally, my husband comes to me and he says, "This is 4 years ago. Can we please buy a new car?" And I said, "Why? This drives beautifully." And he goes, "Megan, it still requires the key. I think it's time we move on. You push the button to turn cars on today." And I said, "Fine, but this is the price. This is how old it's got to be because it's not going to better my life and it's not going to better my wealth." And he said, "What is gotten into you? Why does this matter to you so much?" And I said, "Because it was how I was raised. My father ran a multi-million-dollar construction company, and when I went to work with him one day, we pulled up in his 1980 Honda with 450,000 kilometers on it. And we pulled up, and there were his private parking spot next to his three business partners' private parking spots. It was a Jaguar, it was a Mercedes, and it was a Beamer. My dad pulled right up. And I said, "Oh, God, Dad, come on, get a new car. This is pathetic." And he goes, "Megan, I'm in the construction business, honey. Did you know that I spend most half my day in the office and half my day on the job site?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't realize that." And he said, "And do you know what happens when you pull up to a job site in a Jaguar?" No. Immediately there's 100 feet between me and my men.
Mm-hmm.
I can't afford 1 foot. So I'm going to drive a working man's car because I'm a working man. Don't forget that. Every time you buy something you think you need, just remember that puts another 100 feet between you and your customer, 100 feet between you and your family, 100 feet between you and your friends.
It's
Don't
so
buy
true,
into it.
right? It's so true. I think that, to your point, like I resonate so much with what your father says with the business. You've got the people that are in your business each and every day become part of it's your family, right? So
Yeah,
you want to raise everyone up so that everyone's doing successful, not just yourself, right? So, and it goes right down to exactly what you drive, what you wear. You know, I'm a big advocate that, you know, you have to dress up to show up for sure.
of course.
Uh,
Yep,
Brian
absolutely.
Tracy, as you and I know, very much near and dear,
Yeah,
is
of
learned
course.
some of my foundational business, you know, philosophies with him. But to your point, a vehicle is a depreciating value right off the bat. And too many young people nowadays are looking at what their friends have or what's going on social media and not understanding the ramifications of getting an expensive vehicle nowadays. Loans are easier to come by. I mean, maybe not so much right now with what we're dealing with right now with high inflation, but and rates, but too much. We've seen a lot of young people trying to come in to finally buy a home, not able to afford it
Yeah,
because they've got a Mercedes, which I would never even think of having in my 20s when buying a home, let alone just
never.
even driving around and not even getting into my first job, right? It was just not something that we looked at. So I think there's a lot. And I think to your point, like the mentorship that you do and what you speak on, your life, the way you live, what you emulate, you've got so much and you continue to give so much back to so many people. And again, like I continuously say, I was saying to a lot of people, I was so honored to have you on today because I knew your story would resonate with so many people that they can really turn a corner on their finances and become successful. And that's really what the whole premise of this podcast is for. It's not
Absolutely.
showing judgment. It's giving tools of success that there's little things that people can take away to start implementing in their life to make a difference. And you can start at any age. It doesn't matter if you're 15 or 9 or 20 or 50.
Yeah,
There's power and there's people around like you and I and other people in the community that can help you out and make a difference. So we have 4 rapid fire questions that we want to ask you.
exciting.
And each of these questions, I usually give about a minute, but we can dive in a little bit more. Sometimes, you know, there's more conversation and more add back that you can really provide to our listeners as well. So the first one is define wealth in your own words.
Oh, wealth is never just thinking about money.
Love
Wealth
it.
is not thinking about money. It's thinking about your family. It's thinking about your friends. It's thinking about your plans this weekend. It's thinking about your vacation. It's not thinking about money.
Love it. And what is the best and worst advice that you received about money?
Best advice was buy a house, buy it fast, buy it young, and never leave the market. Keep that principal residence, keep rolling, keep leveraging, never gamble on the principal residence. Buy it fast, buy it young, buy it now. The worst, credit cards are a good idea. they're they're a means to an end. If you want to know how crazy and hyper focused I am, and I joke around with this with my boss, Paul Bruce, he knows, I will
Yeah.
go into a restaurant, I will pay for my dinner with my credit card. And by the time we get into the car, I'm already on my mobile app moving money. I don't wait. I'm moving my money. I use my credit card to get my points, but I pay for dinner with cash.
The power of points on a credit card is another podcast.
It's
100%.
another podcast. This is
Absolutely.
leveraging, right?
It
I
is.
have the cash to buy the dinner, but I know if I buy it on my credit card, I'm going to get a free vacation.
And you know what? I definitely will get you on next because another time because we'll talk about compound interest too, the magic of that.
Oh,
and
Absolutely.
really dumbing down, really clarifying what that is, like really
Yep.
dumbing it down so that people can understand, because I think a lot of people get confused on that. Okay, final question for you on this, or actually, no, I'm sorry, we've had number 2. So this number 3. What is your number 1 lesson about money that you would share with the audience throughout your whole journey of financial growth?
Mm-hmm. Let time take care of you. So what do I mean by that? I mean, try to save as much money as you can, as young as you can, because time and compound interest will take care of the rest. So this is what happened to me. My father said to me when I was 25 years old, "What's your number?" I said, "What do you mean, what's my number?" He goes, "What's your number? What's the number you want to get to?" And I went, "Oh, I don't know, like when I'm 65." He goes, "Yeah, when you're 65, what's your number?" And at the time, I said 5 million. That number's changed quite a bit now, but 5 million. And he goes, "Now you got to work your way back. Work your way back through the math. And then by the age of 30, how much money do you have to have in your bank account to start banking toward that number?" Because, Megan, if you start saving at 50, which a lot of my friends did, there's no time.
Yeah.
There's no time.
I love it. Last question. What is your favorite quote?
Oh, that's a great question.
And you might not just have a favorite one, because I have many. Like, I have a
Yeah,
lot. So
yeah. No, when
is there something you
I'm
can think
trying
of?
to, well, and this is from nobody famous again. This is from the man who taught me everything about money, and
Yeah.
that's my father.
Yeah.
And this is, he would always say to me, and this is, as I resonated from being a very young child, it was this quote of, "It is your opportunity to make as much money as you choose, and then choose to use that money wisely."
Love it.
And that has literally been the cornerstone of my life. I do not make a decision on any given day without that.
It's incredible. So good. So we have a question for you. It's a surprise question, and it's from our previous guest. So they will provide a question for our next guest. So
Awesome.
here it is. What is the one personal investment that you've made that has significantly improved your financial well-being?
My first condo at 23. I bought it in Yaletown of Vancouver. I bought that particular building for a reason because my father was a builder,
Mhm.
and he would tell me, "This is the kind of a building you got to buy because it's the only one that's not going to leak on the street, because I know what makes them leak, and this is the one that's not going to leak." And I bought in a neighborhood that was only going to get better. I bought in a city that was world renowned. And that investment from the age of 23, when I sold it at 25 to my brother, I made a $150,000 increase. And I took that 150, I added it to the amount that I already had, and I bought a 2-bedroom in the same building. In fact, it wasn't even for sale. I just went to the other floors and slipped a little note under the door, and I said, "If you're selling, I'm buying." It's a great building in a great neighborhood in one of the greatest cities of the world. That wasn't a gamble. That was a promise for future wealth.
It's incredible. And it's real estate, right? The power of real estate, which
The
you and I have
power
been
of
saying for
real
many, many
estate.
years, right?
It's a game changer. It's a game changer. And so when you think about your principal residence as not an ATM machine, not a refinance machine, but a machine that should be leveraged for your wealth and your children's wealth and generational wealth to come.
Yes, you're right. Generational wealth, right? You can
It is.
really impact your financing for this moment, for your life, but impacting generations to come.
If you look at any billionaire today, they'd made it through two avenues: buying and selling businesses,
Mhm.
buying and selling real estate. Then they took the auxiliary money from that and invested it into the stock market. They didn't start there. They started in the fundamentals. Again, it's not sexy, but it'll change your life.
And it's what you said before, slowest, right, is the fastest way to get there because it's not pretty, it's not complicated, it's very basic, but it's compound interest and it's equity wealth that you build with values appreciating over time. I love what Warren Buffett says. He says that, the two lessons you can learn about money is not to lose money and not to lose money.
Okay, okay, Tracy, I live and die by that. Okay, because I have something, and again, this is where I'm sharing too much, and people are going to wonder, if I got real OCD issues and other stuff. But I have what is called Financial Fridays, and
Okay.
every single Friday in my life, and my husband can attest to this, I count my money, just like my dad. And it didn't matter if I was counting $500 or $5,000 or $500,000. I counted my money every Friday because that number was just going to go up. It was never going to go down.
But that is such a great thing. If you look at anybody that's financially successful, like yourself, even some of the, people that are very active on social media, that's what they do. They're financial educators. Grant Cardone, for example, he
Hmm.
talks about every Sunday, he sits down not only with his wife, but with his children and
Oh,
talks about their finances and shows it. And so, like, that is such a game changer and educator for what you had was learning about finances and everyday management of what that looked like before you were even 10.
oh, Tracy, I'll never forget the one day I was sitting on my father's lap and he was walking me through the credit card statement. And line by line, he used to take a ruler on the page and go line by line. This is before we, of course, we had it on an app, we had it on our phone, and we could just check. And he would take a ruler after he got his credit card statement at the end of every month, and he would go line by line by line. And then I remember he would say the same thing. It was always so funny. He would look up from his desk and he'd go, Mary, and that was my mother's name, and she'd yell from the kitchen, yes, Bob. Did you really spend $1,487 at the Bay? And she'd go, yes, Bob. Okay. And he would just check it off
Yeah.
because he was counting where our money was going, checking if there was any fraud. And I remember that month over month. Mary? Yes, Bob. Did you buy? It was a riot, but I do it today. I check for myself. I look, where's my money going? What's my level of consciousness? And
Yes.
this is that famous line. And, I love this line. And Tracy, you know her well. It's my coach for years. You've worked with her, Perry Sean. You
Mhm.
can either live life by default or you can live it by design. And
I love
here's how
that.
you break historical credit in a family is you make the choice in your generation to break the financial ties of the past
Mhm.
and you manage your finances by design, no longer by default.
And that's so empowering, right? It's such a game changer. And I think that's what wealth is. Like, wealth is owning your life, right? Taking control of what you truly want to do and when you don't want to do it. And I don't think,
Oh, absolutely.
yes, wealth is what, when we look at that word traditionally, it's what's in your bank account, but your wealth, like, what is your enough to get you to be able to balance your life? Because everyone's looks a little different, right?
I,
Um,
I I never felt so empowered than the day that I decided to get a divorce from my first husband.
yeah.
And I made the decision in 24 hours and I asked him to leave within 36. And all my friends said, how were you able to make that decision so quickly? And I said, because I had the financial stability to do it. That was a huge gift. I know I didn't have to wonder where I was going to live, how I was going to eat. I was taking care of myself.
So empowering, right?
It was huge. It was
It's
huge.
such a game changer to be able, and I think that if people could learn that at a young age, to be able to really take control of their lives because they're worth it, I think it's worth, right? Like
Yeah.
you learned about self-worth very, very young, right?
Hmm.
You had great mentorship, you had a strong financial understanding, and it helped you build your self-worth. So many people really struggle on that, I find, and especially with women.
Hmm.
We're so used to being able to give to everyone else, but not be able to look at ourselves and say, okay, what we need to actually put the oxygen mask on first, right? It's just that old analogy, right?
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
right.
And we've got to start communicating what we want.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to start asking for what we need, and we have to stop compromising. I love that there's this conversation online that I often pops up in my feed, and it's this man says to this woman, "Well, don't you want to get married so you have somebody to compromise with?" And she started laughing. She says, "Compromise, compromise. Why would I ever compromise?" She goes, that's just a bunch of BS that women have been sold for years. So we don't get our way. So we don't get truly what we ever want.
Mm-hmm.
Men are asked to go for it 120%. We're asked to show up and ask for 50% of what we want. I love the famous line I was told when I was really young. Megan, if you want $100,000 income, go in and ask for 130, and then you can work your way down, and and then they'll find that middle ground, and you can agree on 100. And I went, no, either they give me 100 or I quit. That's power. That's
Exactly.
determination. I
Yeah.
don't need to negotiate with my male boss so he feels better that he got a better deal from what I was asking for. I'm not here to make him more comfortable. I'm here to get what I deserve and what I'm worth. I've been 18 years at MCAP. I've resigned once. I've thought about leaving twice. We all should be empowered to think about our futures. And we should all be empowered to think about where our future goes. And I can totally appreciate that each of us will have different levels of risk capacity,
Mm-hmm.
whether that is where you are, if you have children, what your level of safety is. I understand all of that will impact the level of risk and leverage that you will go for. And I decided very young that I would risk it all. And then what I decided was I would help other women take greater risks with my support.
Incredible. And you do. I see it time and time again. One of the things I told my children, and I tell a lot of young people that talk to me, is making sure you're good with yourself first before you get in any relationship, any partnership, business, personal. Really take time to define your values for yourself, have complete self love, which takes
Mhm.
time. But I'm going to go back to it, right? Slowest is the fastest way to get there. And that will give you success in every aspect. And Megan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on Beyond the Mortgage. Thank you so much. I know this episode, so many listeners are going to learn so many ways that they can really empower themselves or people around them that maybe need the assistance to really take the next step for financial growth and freedom. So I am so honored that you were able to come on this podcast, and blessed to have you, my friend, for many years and see your exceptional growth as a woman and as a leader in our industry. So thank you again.
Oh, you're so very welcome. Continue your work, continue sharing your voice because you are helping people make the greatest financial purchase of their life that could potentially change the wealth of their family for generations.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to this episode of Beyond the Mortgage. If you find this information valuable and insightful, connect with me on social media at Tracy Valco. And most importantly, make sure that you subscribe to this. I'd love to continue the conversation and hear your thoughts about this topic. No matter what challenge comes your way, you have the strength to overcome them. Until next time, take care, and I look forward to bringing you more valuable content on Beyond the Mortgage. And remember, you got this.